This week on the Old Poke Show, Clint and I talk about the Big 12 championship game loss to Texas. We get into a spirited debate about the college football playoffs, and we talk about that bold trip to Houston. All that here on the Old Poke Show. Welcome to the Old Poke Show. This is the show where we talk to Cowboy legends from the past and the present and review the OSU program going into the future. I'm your host, Deion Imade, alongside my man himself, Clint Chelf, number 10, birthday boy himself. What's up, baby?
Nothing, man. It's always good to get those 33rd birthdays out of the way. They're super important. Everybody loves to talk about them. Everybody's pumped to wish me happy birthday for that one. It's truly a milestone in our lives. So I'm doing well, man. If you notice a little bit more energy and a little more spring in my step, even after the loss, it's because it's my birthday today. So got to be happy on your birthday. I mean, you just have to.
Another turn around the sun. And not everybody gets to make it to 33. So, man, we're glad you're here, Clint, and happy birthday, man. It's a great honor for us to spend your birthday with us.
I honestly wouldn't want to be doing anything else other than recording the show for our listeners, for our fans. So I'm happy to be here, glad to be here, excited to be here. Not that excited to talk about this game.
Yeah.
but I am excited to kind of recap the season, talk a little bit about the college football playoff with you. So how was your weekend? Let's start there. Enough about me and my birthday. How was your weekend in Dallas outside of obviously the game?
I mean, outside of the game, it was pretty dope, man. We got a chance to do some good stuff and create some content. Friday night, we hosted the live show with Robert Allen. Shout out to Robert, and with the Posse event at AT&T Stadium. That was really cool. Got a chance to see Nelly's sound check, so that was pretty special. And then there was also the pregame show that we were a part of. Shout out to Megan for hosting that, and a host of other individuals who made a special appearance. But it was fun. I got to hang out with the family, and because parents and brothers are still in Dallas, so I got another opportunity to hang out with them. So it was a great time, Clint. It was a great time. How was your experience making it to Dallas and hanging out with some friends of ours?
It was great. Anytime. So my brother moved into a new house recently, so it was good to get down there. If you think I got a lot of kids, he's even got one more than me. So he's got 3 under 5. Well, I guess turning Kim is turning 6 actually. So under 6. So it was good to get down there and see all the nieces and nephews. Great to go to the game, see a bunch of old friends, record the show like you mentioned. It's always great to witness those type of events, even if the result wasn't. I'm 0 for 2 now, so I'm not going to go to the next one. I was at Baylor at this one. We did our radio show at the stadium for both of them, and then I watched the game we lost. So it's always great to come to those events. You never know how often they're going to come around. So it was great to see the Pokes one last time. So I'm you know what, it was a not great game. Obviously, I don't need to tell you guys that, but the rest of the weekend was pretty solid.
Yeah, you can't be mad about going to Dallas. I mean, shout out to Caleb and Chucky Love, Charlie Moore. We got to see some
Jake Jenkins. Yeah, all the guys back from that I lived with. So
yeah, so that was really, really fun. But yeah, the game, that little 4-hour window right there, I really tried to put a damper on our mood there.
That was a tough one. I will, I'll let you talk a little bit first. You want to talk about maybe some overarching thoughts? You just want to get right into the defense and talk about that?
I have one specific thought that I kind of wanted to get off my chest.
Okay.
Clint, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Texas is pretty good.
Them boys are fast.
Bro, Texas is pretty good, bro. Like, I know they came into the season with a lot of hype and everybody was, talking about it's Texas. They're boosting them up. But rightfully so, man. They came into the season with a lot of returning starters. And And everybody saw that, Red River rivalry, and we kind of, slept on Texas a little bit, but they had some performances versus, Kansas and Iowa State and Kansas State that weren't the best, where it came down to the final minutes. But unlike Texas of the past, they pulled out those games, and they finished the job every Saturday, and were putting themselves in situations to win ball games. And uh, uh, Texas isn't that team of the past where they were just like all flash and living off the glory of Texas teams from recent years, and not really being tough and handling their business on the field between the white lines, just thinking that Longhorn on the side of the helmet would just get it done for them. Now, this is a tough Texas team now, bro. Like, these dudes are, 4-star, 5-star guys that are, turning into tough, solid college football players that, know how to get things done. And coaching wise, uh, they got things kind of figured out over there. I mean, Sarkisian has the play calling down. I mean, as far as we all know, with him, the script is always going to be A1. But the thing is, play calling throughout the game is where he's kind of, had some trouble. And once he got on a roll, he had no trouble, dialing things up and staying in rhythm. And I think that's what the Texas team that we saw, where their quarterback was healthy, the running game was looking all right, even though they lost their starting tailback, Brooks. The other guys, Blue and what's his name, Xavier Robinson. Those
CJ Baxter.
Those guys filled in very nicely. And then the guys on the outside, Worthy. I know he didn't finish the game, and hopefully he'll be back for the college football playoffs. I don't know if he will or not, but they had Mitchell on the outside as well. They're fast. And then the tight end Sanders, like that dude is huge, bro. He is a first round talent for sure, and he looked like it on Saturday as well. And it just seemed like, I don't know if it was more of those guys being so much better athletes than the individuals that the Cowboys were putting on the field, or if the Cowboys were just weren't ready for the moment defensively, because there were so many times where little mistakes would happen and it would turn into 6 points for the Longhorns. And I think it's a kind of a combination of both, for the sheer fact that, hey, you make a little mistake and a good team turns that little mistake into 6 points. Like, I mean, the touchdown on the double move route on third down, or not, it wasn't a touchdown. It was just, I think it just went for a big play.
Yeah.
But we all know, as a defensive back, when you get a double move route, you close on that upfield shoulder, you collision them, and you break up the timing, or at least the path of the route, and you try to run it down and make a good play. Well, this time you run to that back shoulder, you don't get a collision, the guy gets a free release, and it turns into a big play. And then on, touchdowns where they're pulling the guard and the tackle and different things like that, linebackers aren't redirecting and, going to the new gaps and filling those holes, and they're, getting stuck in the original one. And, Texas goes in untouched into the end zone. So little mistakes here and there cause this defense to, stay on the field on third downs and give up big scores. And I mean, I want to say we got into the third quarter, maybe fourth, can't remember right now, until the Cowboys were able to get off the field on downs. For the first half, I don't remember them, not scoring on a drive. So little things here and there just showed like maybe a lack of focus, or maybe the moment being too big for the Cowboys defense in specific scenarios. And then offensively, definitely couldn't get things going in the running game. We knew that was going to be a tough night. And then on the outside, I mean, it just didn't seem like Alan Bowman had his best day. And I don't want to blame it on one individual, but it just seems like their passes were a little off. And, I thought the secondary was somewhere we could attack them, and it didn't. And they did from time to time, but it just wasn't consistent enough to be a recipe for success offensively, and that was unfortunate because I thought there was some guys that we had, that Leon Johnson and Owens and Presley, that could really take advantage of the secondary, and they showed the ability that they could, but just seemed like not everything was clicking that day. And again, Corey Black going down in the first drive, I think bigger deal than people realize, because I got a chance to talk to some of the coaching staff before the game that morning, and I knew Corey Black was going to be a big part of the game plan, especially with Xavier Worthy on the outside, and him being missing, I think, kind of threw something off in the defense and really rattled them. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Yeah, Clint,
Yeah, I echo a lot of what you say. The few points that I wrote down while you were talking that I wanted to talk about was, you talked about this Texas team being different than other teams, and the thing that I noticed being in the stadium. So for our listeners that weren't there, this Texas team, and if you listen to the episode in Bob Ballou last week, he talked about the culture that they've established, and I felt like that was palpable. I could feel that those guys were bought in a lot like our guys. They had a culture that was resilient, that was gonna push them through that game. I didn't feel at any moment like, and obviously the scoreboard, but I just felt like that felt like a different team because of the culture. They've always had the athletes, but I was super impressed with just watching them on their sidelines, watching when Ewers was out, when he came back in, watching them react to him in certain moments. I felt like that seemed different than a team that you typically see with Texas, with 4 and 5 star guys that are a lot of me guys. You know what I mean? That buy-in was something that I really felt like I saw. And then you talked about the mistakes, and I think that was the biggest difference on the field between old Texas teams and this Texas team, or even teams that we have played this year and beaten, is you can tell a difference between good teams and great teams. If we made a mistake, it was either 6 points or a pick, or they were right there. They took advantage of every little misstep, everything that we did wrong. And I think that's a big part of why they are in the college football playoff, right? Is when you capitalize on those mistakes. If somebody's going to mess up, and you have to make them pay for it. We've seen teams, BYU, Houston, that jump out to these leads on Oklahoma State. And yeah, we're making mistakes, but we can usually claw ourselves back into it because they don't take advantage of every single one. And so I thought that was something that was different. Just watching them compared to other teams we faced. And then you talked about Corey Black going out. You talked about the secondary, and we can get more into that. But one thing I noticed between the two is that we had talked about with Bob and what we had thought on radio, that you could rattle Quinn Ewers a little bit, right? You could get around him, you could hit him, you could make him be a little inaccurate, because at times he is inaccurate. And that was not the case. And I think a lot of that has to do with their defensive line protected their secondary a lot better than our defensive line protected our secondary. And I think that's what ultimately it came down to, right? I mean, like, the game plan for Sark was very good. And I felt like I was watching Blake Shapen again, 10 for 10, 11 for 11, just dialing it up, the screen game. But ultimately, I don't think our D-line ever made him feel uncomfortable.
True.
We had the one pick by Nick Martin. But I thought they did a better job of making Bowman feel uncomfortable. And then we can get into, if you want to start on defense, we can talk a little bit more specific about defense and offense. But those were kind of my overarching thoughts, as well as I will add this, and this is going to be a theme throughout everything I say, is watching in person, they seemed so much faster.
Yeah.
At every position, bigger on the offensive line and faster. The only person that I felt like when I was watching our defense that had the speed to keep up with them was Nick Martin.
Yeah.
I felt like he was the only guy that I watched that I was like, he's playing at the same speed as those guys. So,
yeah, especially there was one play Nick Martin chased down Worthy from behind.
Was that not insane?
That was incredible, bro. Because I mean, I know Worthy was like making some moves in the open field that slowed him down a little bit, but Nick Martin catching you from behind, a linebacker catching a speedy wide receiver,
Yeah,
very impressive. And
very impressive.
I just felt like our defense didn't play with much confidence. It like and again, I don't want to say that anybody was out there playing scared because that's not the case, but it just felt like it took them a long time to realize they could play with these guys. And I think I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, they just need a big play. They just need a big play to kind of calm them down and realize these guys make mistakes and they can play with these guys. And that Nick Martin interception, I thought it would do it. I thought they would, get the interception. He returns it to about the 2-yard line, and I thought it would be, something that to galvanize around. And then we go back out there on the field, and they give up another, long drive for a touchdown. And I was just like, dang it. Because
I do want to have a little back and forth on this because I think that was probably the biggest sequence of events of the game. So it was 28-7, and Nick gets that pick, and he brings it down to the 3-yard line, whatever it was, and we score, and it's 28-14. And you want to talk about you're in the game at that moment.
Yeah.
You're in the game at that moment. I mean, it was 28-7. You got it to 2 possessions. And then I think that was the next series where it was the double move, the third down backbreaker. If I'm not mistaken, that let me look through. I have it pulled up right here.
Because I do remember them being in like a 3rd and 6. And then
Jordan Whittington 17 yards. Then Jordan Whittington 20 yards. Then Jatavian Sanders 26 yards. You had him in 3rd and 6, and it would have been a 3 and out. You talk about a huge sequence there. If you get them to punt, and you got the ball going in to make it 1 possession, and they go down, and score, make it 35-14. But I did want to talk about that part of it. I thought that was a huge part of the game. And then something else you mentioned, and I want to ask you this question because I want to ask some tough questions. I feel like we're obligated to do this when you get thoroughly beat like that. I felt like that the defenders, after about the 2nd series maybe, and everything Texas is doing is working. Every screenplay. I mean, they had us nailed to a T on defense.
Yeah.
And I wonder if some of those players on defense felt like they lost confidence in the game plan. I've never been there, but if you're out there, Deion, and you're doing your job and they're still scoring on you at will, it's like, what do we do at this point? Like, what can we do? And Nardo, that's a tough ask. They have a lot of weapons. Sark is a offensive genius. I mean, no matter where he's been, he has been very good on offense and drawing up game plans. You mentioned that in your opening. So I just wonder from a defender's perspective, if you're back there playing safety, you're doing your job, you come off the field and they're still scoring, it's like, now what do I do?
I don't know if they lost confidence in the game plan, surely because we've gone through a trend of games where the game plan initially hasn't worked because of all the changes that offenses are making against us. And then in the in-game adjustments, in the second half adjustments, in halftime adjustments, excuse me, they had been working so well. So I think, coming out of halftime, these guys, making some adjustments, and then that drive. I think the drive after halftime is the one that kind of just like, I don't know if we got it today, guys, because they go in there, they make adjustments, you come out, and then Texas goes right down the field and scores again. So I just like yours had so much time in the backfield to complete passes. He was getting the ball out of his hands on the 1st and 2nd read. It was just too much for
the screen game. I thought the screen game was incredible. They drew up. They had the trick play, the Philly special to Jatavian Sanders. They had the trick play to Sweat, throwing him a touchdown. I mean, that game plan was just, man, it was good. It was really good, and it was tough to defend. And they used all their weapons. They kept Quinn Ewers clean. They kept him on schedule. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's just they did a good job.
Yeah, and it's Sweat, the touchdown in the end zone really got that team hype. And I mean, it was just a mistake. It was just an easy mistake. I mean, he comes in, he lines up as the tight end. So safety's supposed to take him, and miscommunication. I don't know what happened, but
I
goes,
honestly,
goes into the end zone by himself. Nobody's there, and he catches a touchdown.
I thought the same thing on the Jatavian Sanders like Philly special play. I thought we had to play. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Bad timing. Hold please, because I've said his name only 1,000 times on this podcast before. Outside linebacker for us.
Oh, Benson.
Xavier Benson. I thought he flowed pretty well and he was right there. And I thought if I'm pretty sure it was either him, could have been a safety. They run right. Jatavian Sanders runs right by him, and he's looking to see what's going on in the backfield. And if he just had seen him, he could have picked him up, collisioned him, whatever. But it's one of those deals where it's like, man, it's a hard play to defend if you're not ready for it.
Yeah, it just seemed like defensively everything that could go wrong did go wrong, except for an interception where Quinn Ewers didn't see Nick Martin in that incognito black jersey, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, defensively, that Texas offense was good, and we just made simple mistakes that they capitalized on, and that's the way the cookie crumbled on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I talked about with a great team. You can't. I talked about that on radio. That was kind of my parting shot. Was this team? You have to start fast because, I think everybody looked at it and was like, okay, Texas has let Houston come back on them. They've let TCU come back on them, and I just, in a game like that with what they had to play for, if they jump out to a lead, that matchup, it just felt like there was not going to be a way, and that's what we saw. By no means blaming the defense because the offense was not great. 3 and out to start, 5 plays and 15 yards punt to go again when you get the ball. And the third drive was great. We saw Rashad Owens make a big time catch. The running game, I'll just go ahead and transition to the offense for us, was non-existent for the most part of the day. We knew that was going to be a tough matchup. Ollie Gordon goes 13 for 34 yards. Just not a lot there.
Just not a lot of push.
Not a lot of push against those dudes up front. We knew that was going to happen for the most part. The what was going to offset that, we thought, was the sheer number of carries we could give Ollie Gordon. And when you fall behind, you just can't do that. I mean, there's just no way. So they got punched in the mouth. Unlike you, Alan Bowman was not sharp. The interception was a touchdown. I think, if he could, he's been a back foot guy all year. There was a guy in his face. I think if he could have stepped into it, it's a touchdown. And that goes to the point I made about their defensive line protecting that back end.
Yeah.
All in all, just
incredible catch by the defensive back too. I mean,
it
was a third down. He took a shot down the field, and honestly, the interception probably saved us a couple of yards instead of punting the ball away. But still, could have been a positive instead of a negative for the Cowboys.
It could have been if he throws that ball out front. That's a touchdown. It's 21-14. Who knows? I felt like
not even out front though, because the way he threw it, I thought Owens made a good adjustment to the ball. It was just a little shorter than we needed it to be.
Yeah.
And the defensive back made a really good play. Like
he did. I mean, he turned and it was a great catch. But it just felt like, man, it felt like they were a good team. That's what it felt like, to be honest with you. And it felt like they had a great game plan, and it felt like we came out and got punched in the mouth and never responded. I don't know that they're 49-21 better than us. But they were when it counted. And Brennan Presley, 9 for 93 and a touchdown. I thought he fought his tail off. Yeah. Rashad Owens had some big catches. I think that what we've seen this year from every single game that we've watched in the Big 12, from the Iowa State game till now, is you can get away with some some holds. You can get away with some mauling receivers in the back end. And I thought by no means did that make, the game any different than it probably would have been, but it's just wild to see that early in the game. I thought Owens got PI'd.
Yeah, man, that was terrible.
Quiet game from Leon. You have to wonder, that's by far the best team in the biggest stage he's played on.
Yeah.
So there's questions to be asked there. I hope he's able to come back, but Bowman, 22 for 38, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. The guy fights, and I have a lot of respect for him. They went out there and played till the end. Just kind of a lot like that UCF game. It just felt like once it got away from this team, it was really hard to get it back. The guys up front, Joe Mahalski, those guys in the middle, they fought against those Byron Murphy and Sweat. Those guys are animals. So I don't want to sit here and be critical in a game like that because, they get enough of that. I've been in that situation. You get enough of that from the media after the game. So
yeah, going back to that pass interference, man. Like, I just feel like that one put a real damper offensively on what we were being able to do because back-to-back 3-and-outs was not the way I thought things were going to go offensively. And it just like, I understand what the ref thought he saw. I mean, running down the field against Owens, it was good coverage running down the field. Mm-hmm. But when the ball was in the air, he took his eye away, he turned back for Owens and restricted him from coming back to the football. And that was clearly pass interference. Like, I understand he saw him in good positioning in the beginning of the route, but at the end, he was not. And it was just unfortunate to see something like that get let go,
Yeah. And I think the physicality like that kind of took Leon out of his game a little bit. He had the fumble. And that was a drive where, it was 35-14. We get a first down. He's got a, he's got a catch and he's turning it. It's kind of awkward, not able to wrap the ball. They put a hand right on it. It
was so bang bang.
It was bang bang. Like
it was so fast.
Almost not even a catch. Almost, didn't even make a football move. So, but that didn't really kill us. They missed a field goal after that, and then we got the ball into half. So it was 35-14. But it felt like if you go down there, you get some points. It's 35-21 at half. It's a 2-possession game. There's all these drives where it was like, okay, a turnover, and we're going to get it to 2 possessions. We're going to get it to 1 possession, and the offense just could not get it going. Ollie Gordon could not get it going. Part of that, obviously, those guys up front, but part of it was game script as well. So, I thought Casey Dunn was fine. I thought it was okay. The execution, the first 3-and-out. We've done this a few times where you run an entire series to start the game and don't give Ollie the ball. If we're going to throw it to him. Just get him involved early. I think right from the jump. I know it's going to be tough to run against those guys, but I don't love that. I don't love going 3-and-out with him not touching the ball. But other than that, I thought the game plan was fine. You just kind of got a few turnover stuff here and there that just really set you back when you needed it the most. So, yeah. Special teams. You want to talk any more offense? You want to go to special teams because,
special teams. Here's the deal. Like, nothing really big happened in special teams. I was going in concerned about what happened the week before versus BYU, but it seems like a lot of those mistakes were cleaned up. And going against one of the best special teams unit in the country, especially for with all the returners that they have, Worthy and Blue and all those guys being back there, I think our guys did a good job of going down there, covering up kicks and being disciplined. Other than, I think maybe there might have been one flag.
Yeah, I think when you talk about special teams, Well, a lot like the refs. If there's nothing that sticks out, then it's usually a fine game. I remember the first punt seemed short. I'm looking at it, it went like 30 something yards, and it was not a situation where we needed a pooch punt like to down them inside the yard line or anything. So outside of that, yeah, I mean, to me, special teams were fine. Game plan on that end was fine. Not really much else. Didn't kick any field goals.
Nah.
So
I did have a time when I was in the radio booth and I was looking onto the field, and it was like the fourth quarter, like the beginning of the fourth quarter. And I was looking at the sideline, and you got to remember, special teams wise, they did take Alex Hale off the extra point kickoffs team for this year. Like, he had some issues, and they were doing a little bit of some specialty stuff with, I can't remember who was the special teams, the extra point kicker, number 69 for the Cowboys. He was the one that was kicking for extra points. And so I was looking on the sideline, looking at Alex Hale, and I was like, golly, bro, like, this dude hasn't touched the field not once. Like, I was like, man, it must have been a really boring Saturday afternoon for Alex Hale, because we never got into, field goal position to give him an opportunity to, add to his total for the season. And, the extra point was he wasn't, trotting onto the field. So that was unfortunate.
yeah. Well, do you want to talk a little bit of just about the season in general? I know you've got some thoughts on the college football playoff. So
yeah, I think we can, briefly talk about the season, like real quick. I mean, I don't want to get into too much in depth about it. I think we can do that a little later. I mean, I kind of want to, give a lot of, discussion into this college football playoff. But season wide, I think, the Cowboys, I mean, they overachieved, right?
well, and I get, yeah, no, you're definitely right. We need to do a full recap later in the year. The only thing I wanted to mention is it's portal season, which is I mean, it's huge now, right? I mean, it's like
it's a big deal.
And at this point last year, I think we had 10 guys jump in the portal the first day, maybe more, big time guys. So, it feels like a lot like special teams. No news is great news. I don't want to hear about it at all. By all accounts, what we've heard,
I think there's only one player, like a safety, and I'm blanking.
Ladarius Webb, safety's in, and Ricky Lolohea, who has not been with the team. I don't think I'm probably saying his name wrong. And then Joe Mihalski has announced that he's coming back for his 6th year, which is great news. One of the better offensive linemen on that unit, and a very important one. So yeah, we don't have to do much of the recap. I think mainly I just wanted to say, kind of talk about the portal for a second, and how much better it feels this year than to start last year. But hindsight's 2020. Obviously, it turned out pretty good for us.
Yeah, and that's the kind of things that happen when you have a somewhat successful season, and people seem to be in good spirits and happy with what's going on over there. And hopefully, everybody gets taken care of, and we get a team in there that gets an opportunity to kind of run it back and see how special they can be in the future.
Well said. All right. You want to go on this college football playoff? I know.
I can't get you out of here before we discuss it. I mean, it's been a very hot topic issue.
No. I just know from our pre-taping conversations that you've got. I think you've got a lot of passion about this situation. So I want to know. Let's just start here. 4 teams that are in: Michigan, one seed; Washington, Texas, and Alabama.
Right on.
Is that who you think should be in?
Honestly, and me and my brothers were arguing about this after the game on Saturday, after we were like watching especially after we finished watching the SEC championship game where Alabama took down Georgia 27-24. In that situation, I was so flabbergasted at the fact that a 1 seed at the time, because Georgia was 1, if I'm not mistaken, last week.
Yeah.
For you to go to a 1 seed all the way down to out of the playoffs, I was like, how? But if you do the math, Washington had won the night before on Friday, so they're in. We already knew Michigan at the time. We already knew Michigan was going to take care of business, and Iowa was just going to be there twiddling their thumbs in that Big Ten championship game. So you can't. So both of those dudes in Washington and Michigan. So there's 2 slots left. And if you're telling me that Alabama just beat Georgia, so Alabama has to get in because they beat the number 1 seed, and they're like, if you're looking at the best 4 teams at that moment, they have to get in, then there's no slots left because you have to put in Texas because they beat Alabama. So with that being the case, there's no slots left. If Alabama goes, Texas has to go too. It's a tandem thing. It's a 2 for 2. If Alabama goes, Texas has to go in. Florida State. So with that being the case, I think they got it right. And I think me and you are going to have a discussion about this Florida State thing, but I'm going to give you the floor here and say, what did you think about the 4?
Well, let me ask you this, because you use this word, you said the best teams. Do you think the criteria to meet to put in the 4 teams is the 4 best teams or the 4 most deserving teams?
4 best teams.
Okay.
That's what the committee is supposed to like. That's the reason we have a committee, because the human element has to be involved where you pick. You have to see this and you have to be able to judge football as a whole, knowing what the 4 best teams in the country.
Okay, and let me ask you this. If you're going to pick the 4 best teams in the country for this year, you don't think Georgia's one of them? They're only lost to Alabama. You don't think that they'd be favored against Michigan, Washington, and Texas?
Have you seen what Georgia's been doing the last 3 weeks?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm glad you went there.
That's the only reason that, because I see what you're saying.
How bad is Auburn at football this year?
That's very true. That's very true. But you have to remember, rivalry games are different. Rivalry games are.
I don't think you can separate that out as a criteria just because they're different. I think
that's a variable that we're thinking college football. If we're thinking college football, that's a variable that you cannot slide out and say, let's not think about that. Rivalry games are different.
Okay, then would you not consider at this point Georgia and Alabama rivalry game?
No, it's not.
They've met how many straight
SEC championship game.
So there's no there's no element of a rivalry between the 2 best teams of the last decade that have played in the SEC championship game 3 straight times, however many times they've played. I mean, national championships.
We're not saying. See, those are the best teams in the SEC. Those aren't rivals.
Let me ask you this, point blank: you think Washington beats Georgia on a neutral field?
I think there's a place where Washington could beat Georgia on a neutral field. I can honestly say that, because the way those dudes pass the football, the way those dudes throw the football around, they are a dangerous team. I mean, bro, how good do you have to be? We always talk about this in football, Clint. How hard is it to beat a team twice in 1 year? How hard is it to beat a team twice in 1 year?
It's super hard.
And they just beat the Oregon is number 6 right now.
Yeah.
They just beat the number 6 team in the country, not once, but twice in a year. That is a team that is dangerous. And I can honestly say Washington on any given Saturday could beat Georgia for sure.
So why couldn't Florida State?
Bro, Florida State?
They're undefeated.
Are you asking me, could Florida State beat Washington, or are you asking
their defense is? I get the quarterback. I get the quarterback injury. I get that. But if you're saying that one team can beat any other team on any given day, that's what we play football for, right? Is the upset. Right. That's why you play college football.
That's right.
And if there's teams, if you're a Power 5 team, this would be Oklahoma State in this scenario. I guarantee it. If we were an undefeated team, we would be the ones left out, and you wouldn't say you wanted to be in.
But here's the thing. If we're an undefeated team and our team is coming into a situation healthy, no matter what, like, let's be honest, losing Jordan Travis cost Florida State a chance to compete for a national championship. That's point blank and period. But here's the deal. They didn't look good. I mean, the last week when they played Florida.
And okay, but Alabama beat a bad Auburn team on a prayer, 4th and 31. Like, you can't. I feel like you're missing out. You're taking all the good parts of Alabama, and then Georgia. If you're gonna look at that, you talked about their last 3 weeks. They beat Georgia Tech 31-23. I'll give you that one. Rivalry game though, right? So that gets thrown out. Before that, number 25 Tennessee, 38-10 at Tennessee. So they smoked. Number 11, almost a top 10 team, Ole Miss, 52-17. So there's just no way that you can convince me. I would hook you up to a lie detector test, and I would say, Deion, you don't think Georgia is a top 4 team in the country. If you're going to do best teams, they have the pedigree. They have the number 1 ranking for the last 8 weeks, whatever it's been, 4, 6, 8 weeks. They've been the number 1 team. Their only loss is to a good Alabama team who you have in. I would love. I'm sure there's hypothetical lines out there. I think Georgia would be almost. They'd be over 3.5 point favorites against Washington on probably more.
No. I think people are looking at Georgia and looking at their resume of the last 3 years and saying we have to give them an opportunity at this until they lose. I know they won 29 games in a row, but they lost, and they've been playing around these last couple of weeks. The same way Florida State's been playing around these last 2 weeks. You look at that. You look at the performance that they put on the field. Florida State versus Florida, and then in the ACC championship game where you passed for all of 55 yards, Clint.
Okay, I'm glad you said that.
You passed for all of 55 yards, and you're telling me that you're one of the best 4 teams in the country?
So let me read off some stats. This is quarterback stats: 22 for 30 for 147 yards. 16 for 20 for 148 yards and a touchdown. 12 for 23 for 141 yards and 1 interception.
What team is that, Clint?
That's Michigan. Michigan had 33 straight runs one game this year. So don't give me I'm as much as a quarterback guy as you can get, but the quarterback play for Michigan has been almost as bad as Florida State's last 3 weeks with their second and third team guy, and I think their second team guy would be back.
But
that's my whole point. Is the inconsistencies.
But there's
inconsistencies. If you're gonna do
no.
I think you have to include
Michigan's
them.
MO throughout the whole season, though. Just because their quarterbacks, that's been Michigan. Right now,
what does that mean?
That you can't.
It's been Florida State because they've won every game.
The ball and putting up crazy numbers.
Florida State has won with defense, and they have really good receivers. And as we know,
that they're not getting the ball to anymore.
But they win the game, right?
Coleman lost out on winning the Biletnikoff because his quarterback was gone.
And they still won, right?
They can't even find ways to get him the ball anymore.
But they still won, though, right?
Bro, that's not the point.
But what is the point then? Quarterback play? Because I gave you Michigan's quarterback play.
The point is we find
you're wanting to take Michigan's quarterback play.
The point is we find the 4 best teams.
If you want to find the 4 best teams, then Georgia's one of them. You cannot tell me otherwise. You cannot sit here and tell me that
Georgia's the 5th best team in the country.
Because it fits your argument.
At this point, right now, not I'm not talking about throughout the year. I'm talking about right now at this point. Georgia is the 5th best team in the country.
I don't think you believe that. I think you believe that it fits your argument.
Clint, Michigan has shown throughout the season that that's the way they play football. Out of the blues,
that's a horrible argument.
Florida State loses their quarterback, and they're changing the way they play football, and that's just not that.
If anything, it makes it more impressive. Imagine them losing J.J. McCarthy if that's how they play football,
But you're
and
saying
then winning the games anyways.
you're saying that's impressive compared to the talent that the teams that they were facing. That's impressive when they're playing Florida. That's impressive when they're playing Louisville. If they go out there
Louisville's number 16
if they
in the
roll
country.
that out against an Alabama, if they roll that out against a Texas, if they roll that out against a Washington,
It could
they're going
win.
to get mollywopped.
But what are you saying though? You just said you opened your argument at the beginning of this that any team could beat another team. That's what you said. I didn't say
on any given Saturday.
Okay,
that's the case. But
if that's the case, then how have they not earned it going undefeated as a Power 5 team?
The committee's job is to pick the 4 best teams.
Okay, if you pick the best, you can't tell me Georgia's not one of them.
They
lost a 3-point game.
Not the fourth best right now. I think they're 5th. Honestly, I think that's just the case scenario, just because of what they displayed against Alabama.
So they're not the top 4 team in the country. You're telling me that Georgia is not a top 4 team in the country because they had a 3-point loss to Alabama on a neutral field. That's why they're not.
Because of how they finished the season off.
Okay, they finished the season at Tennessee, 38-10. Ole Miss blowing a number 11 team in the country out 52-17. You're basing it basically. What
games were those?
Those were their last 3 regular season games were those 2 in the Georgia Tech game. So you're basing it only on the rivalry game against Georgia Tech, which you're not basing your Alabama argument on against Auburn, even though Auburn is horrible because it's a rivalry game, even though Georgia versus Georgia Tech is a rivalry game. So you're holding the Georgia Tech game against Georgia, discounting blowing out number 11 Mississippi, discounting blowing out Tennessee, and losing by 3 points on a neutral field to Alabama. And that's why they're not a top 4 team.
I'm telling you this right now, Clint. You're pulling out these games that look good towards the end of the season, but there has been trends throughout the season where the game against Missouri, where it took the final second to win. That wasn't a very compelling argument to what their resume says. There's
Missouri is a New Year's Six bowl team,
that number 12 team in the country. Against what you're saying is the number. Where would you put Georgia in these rankings?
If you're doing the best, not the most deserving, they're in the top 4.
Okay, no, specifically, where would you put them?
What do you ask? That's what I'm trying to clarify on what you're asking for. If you want the best teams.
So I'm saying 1, 2, 3, 4. Where are you putting Georgia? If you're in it.
That's what I'm trying to say is, do you want the best 4 teams, or do you want what I think is the most deserving 4 teams?
I want the best 4.
The Georgia's in. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, and then that other spot would have to be what I saw, Texas is probably better than Washington. And then I think you have a case for Washington, Florida State. After that, I would say probably Oregon. I'm probably forgetting somebody. But if you're going to do the best 4 teams in the country and you're going to look at top to bottom, talent, pedigree, on the field performance, Georgia is for sure a top 4 team. I don't think until this last week they have been, from wire to wire, they're the only team, to my knowledge, that started number 1 and didn't make the playoffs. And they were number 1 every single week until what's knocked them out of the best 4 team in the country is losing a neutral field game by 3 to Alabama. So if you're going to do best, they're in. If you're not going to do best and you're going to do most deserving, you've got undefeated Michigan, you've got undefeated Washington, you've got undefeated Florida State. Then what you have, to me, is an argument between Alabama and Texas. They played head-to-head. Texas is in. So you leave Alabama out, you leave Georgia out. It's horrible. If it's any other conference, we would say, well, they shouldn't have beat up on each other. They shouldn't have lost the conference championship game. So most deserving to me, and trust me, I hear you. Florida State, I don't think they're one of the best 4. I think they deserve to be in because they're a Power 5 team and they won every game. They lost their quarterback. They still won the game. TCU, same thing last year. I think everybody thought, well, here we go. We got a team in that's not in the SEC. It's not in the Big Ten. They're going to get blown out. Well, they beat Michigan.
Yeah.
So to me, I think you have – my issue is not so much with what you're saying. It's with if you want to define what you have in. If you're going to say as a committee, we're going to put in the best 4 teams, and that's what they did. I think that's what they tried to do. Then I don't see how you leave Georgia out. I don't. Now, if you're going to put the most deserving in, then I think Florida State has an argument. I just think my issue is with the inconsistencies in the rankings more so than anything.
I think your issue is you don't think Washington's that good.
I would have Washington in for most deserving.
Yeah, but we're not talking about most deserving. I don't like. We're talking about the 4 best, and I don't think you think Washington's that good.
Well, they're underdogs against Texas right now. So Alabama's, if we're doing the best, I think Alabama and Georgia would be in for best. I don't think anybody until 48 hours ago would dispute Georgia being in. Then Alabama goes and beats them.
Hold on real quick. You don't. So is Michigan one of the 4 best teams in the country to you?
Yeah, I think so.
Why?
They beat Ohio State. They beat a bad Iowa team, but they beat Penn State. I think with the eye test, if you look at them, they can run the ball. Their quarterback's whatever. He's overrated.
Yeah, that's what my question is. Like, what happens?
Their defense is really good. Their defense is really good. I think JJ McCarthy. He's overrated. You can. Yeah. I mean, no question. I think, but I do think they're one of the 4 best. I think that they would beat Florida State. I think they would beat Washington. Them in Texas. Okay, those 2, and then Alabama and Georgia would be my best 4. Best 4.
I just think I truly think people are sleeping on Washington because they're explosive on the outside, and with Penix throwing that football down the field. Like
I agree, but if we're going to use the most recent results on the field, Washington, their last games, they beat Oregon, great win. I thought Oregon was before last week. I would have put Oregon as one of the best 4 teams.
You got to give them you got to give them bonus points because they beat them twice in one season.
Impressive. They beat Washington State unranked by 3, so we'll give them the rivalry rule. They beat Oregon State number 21 by 2. Okay. They beat Utah
this year. Don't wait. Let's not discredit that. Oregon, DJ Ungale and all them. They were
fine. Yeah, they were number 21. That's what number they were ranked below Oklahoma State. They beat Utah by 7, 35-28, which Utah has been getting trounced. I mean, Oregon beat them by like 50. They beat a bad USC team 52-42. I mean, they beat a bad Stanford team by 9, and Stanford was horrendous. So a team that Oklahoma State beat, Arizona State, Washington beat them 15-7. So, yeah, I get the 2 Oregon wins, but at the same time, I mean, they played some stinkers. They played some bad games. So I don't think that they're a bad team. I think they're better than Florida State. But my issue is with the criteria. If you're going to do most deserving, I don't see how you leave out a Power 5 team that's undefeated. But
I don't know. Just to kind of wrap this up, man, I think the committee got it right. And I think the argument for blaming TCU, what some people are saying, is not the case. But on the other hand, it did show us an example of what you don't want to see, which is a blowout in any of these big time matchup games. You don't want to see it. So it's the committee's obligation to pick the 4 very best teams at that point in the season so that there's a true opportunity to play for a national championship and crown the very best team. And to rest my case, Florida State, in the situation that they put themselves in the situation that's unfortunate, I feel for the players wholeheartedly, But at the end of the day, you're not one of the 4 best right now. And then on the other hand,
okay, I get that, but why is Georgia not?
on the other hand, hold on. On the other hand, Georgia, I'm sorry as well. You had an opportunity to solidify yourself. You had an opportunity to solidify yourself as being one of the 4 best. And because you did not do that, you get slotted at 5 because of losing an opportunity, a neutral site game, a championship game, stakes being there, what they are. If you're the very best team in the country, you win that game. If you don't, I'm sorry.
So they don't get a reprieve for losing because it's at the end of the season. Alabama and Texas can both lose, but as long as it's not the end of the season, then it doesn't matter, is what you're saying.
I'm saying at the end of the season, that team looks like one of the best teams in the nation.
And Georgia does. Make no mistake about it.
Say it again.
And Georgia does. Just because you lost by 3 points, you can't tell me to Alabama, who I think we both agree could win it all, is probably the hottest team in the country. I just don't. That's my issue, is that if you're going to say best, I don't see if that's what you want. If you want to pick the best teams, it's hard for me to not include Georgia in that. That's all.
I think it's super easy to not include Georgia when you see what everybody else did at the end of the season to put themselves into a championship game, and Georgia lost at the last. But
Texas has lost to OU. So you think is what? Let me ask you this: what is a worse loss? Texas losing to whatever rank OU is, or Georgia losing to number 4 rank in a neutral site?
You know what I'm going to say. It's a rivalry game, baby. A rivalry game at the beginning of the season, like you can't discredit that variable.
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I think there's a human element to that where, you're talking about 18 or 20, 21, 22-year-old kids that emotions come into the game, and you've been talked and looked about this game.
And you don't think
and for that situation, you cannot just be throwing around this. You can't add.
I'm just asking the question. What do you think about? I mean, if I lose,
you can't just say Alabama, Georgia is a rivalry game now. You can't just throw that into the mix.
How do games become rivalry games? Is it because if you play for high stakes, they matter? You play regularly.
History.
Yeah. So playing for national championships, right, would be a historic game. Right, playing for conference championships would be a
You can't.
I'm going by year.
You can't make up a rivalry.
How am I making it up? They meet your criteria.
My criteria is a historic event that we say, hey, who's your rival? That's my rival. All right, then let's go play. Like, just because you guys are the best teams in the SEC year in and year out doesn't make it a rivalry.
Even if they play for national championships, conference championships, they've been the best 2 programs for the last decade.
You're just the best. That doesn't make it a rivalry.
We're gonna have to agree. I think what you're saying is that the only rivalry games are ones that are deemed rivalry games before the season, or in some context of like, well, we know they're our rival, but like you can't develop a new one, even though these 2 teams have played in the biggest games the last 3, 4, 5 seasons every year, and you're going to give the kids an excuse. Well, Texas, they had an emotional game. Well, you don't think for the Georgia guys playing against Alabama, and
that's like saying in the early 2000s, Texas and USC were a rival because they were the best teams in the country and they were dueling it out every year. That's not a rival. That's just the 2 very best teams that want to.
How many times did those teams play? How many times they play? How many times they play outside of the 05?
I'm not saying it as a concrete. That's what I'm just saying. Like in early 2000s, the 2 best teams.
You act like I'm just like making up the they've played significant. They have played each other multiple years in a row with the highest stakes on the line, and that to me would be and that would be something that would develop a rivalry and something that, hey, we know we're going to face those guys, and it's going to come down to who's going to get into the college football playoff, who's going to win a national championship. I don't know.
I think they're playing championship games against one another, and I understand that being, you know, an emotional thing, but I don't know, man. I think Georgia's 5.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. The criteria is if it's the best teams. I think if you went to Vegas right now, we can pull them up. I'll look them up, so we'll have them hypothetical lines, what that would be. But
yeah,
I think we've set our pieces on that. I think it's probably time to wrap it up. People are probably like, God, what are these guys talking about? But if you made it this far, we appreciate you listening. Please tweet us and let us know what your college football playoff looks like. And let me know if you think we got it right, if you think the committee got it right. And then that way we can move on from this, because we could go round and around. And we also need to talk about Oklahoma State's bowl a little bit before we get to a full game preview.
Oklahoma State getting the invite to the Texas Bowl over there in Houston, Texas. It should be a fun one. Again, a rematch of the 2018 or 2019 Texas Bowl once again, where the Cowboys face off, 2019, excuse me, where the Cowboys face off against the Texas A&M Aggies on December 27th, 2 days after Christmas. Clint, what'd you think about the invite and playing the Aggies once again?
Yeah, I mean, anytime we get to play one of the old Big 12 matchups, I think it's fun. We got to play Missouri, getting to play obviously Colorado into the future. Haven't quite got the matchup with Nebraska yet, but maybe one day. So it's good. It's good to see those old foes. I'm excited to delve more into Texas A&M. Like we know, similar to Texas teams of the past, it feels like all the 4 and 5 stars, all the guys that you need, unable to put it together. Obviously, the turmoil with Jimbo Fisher at the top. So it'll be interesting to find and see their motivation coming into the game. Sometimes that can help. You know, you've got guys fighting for jobs. You've got auditioning. So I'm very excited about the matchup. As always, I think one more opportunity to get your young guys some practices, but also let those old guys enjoy it and go out and have fun. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited that the Cowboys have another game and they don't get to end the season with that loss over there at AT&T Stadium, and another opportunity to go for that 10th victory. I mean, that's, you know, reaching double digits in victories is a big deal in college football, and our Cowboys have an opportunity to do so. So hopefully everything works out accordingly, and Houston is a fun time for some of the friends and families and the guys on the team. Well, Clint, you ready to get out of here, man?
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode of us talking our thoughts on the college football playoff, as well as the bowl and the Big 12 championship game. So I appreciate you guys. If you're still with us, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and last time, Clint, happy birthday, my man. Glad to see you turn another year older. Glad to be a part of it.
Me too.
Glad to be a part of it, man. Glad to be a part of it. Guys, make sure, like I say every week, that you tune in to OSU Max every week. They have so much great content for you guys. Remember, Ollie Gordon could win the Dope Worker Award on Friday. So with that being the case, I'm sure OSU Max will have some great content for you if that does take place, and you know, leading up into the awards and everything that goes with that. Clint, it seems like you have one more thing to say before we get out of here. Did you have anything to add to that?
No. I'm looking at schedules, looking at Florida State. Now you got me talking college football. I was looking at Texas A&M. So, no, I'm good. You wrap it up.
Yeah, so with that being the case, before we get out of here, make sure, again, tune into OSU Max. Great content every week, and make sure you tune into the Old Poke Show. We appreciate you for listening. Tell your friends and tell your family. All right. Remember, guys, stay loyal and true.
Go Pokes.